I want to update people on what's going on with the Associated Press phone records scandal, as it's being called. To give you the background, if you're not up to speed, authorities obtained via subpoena with a judge's okay the phone numbers called by a bunch of AP reporters, right? And the goal of this was to basically figure out who was the government official, or who were, if there were more than one, who were the government officials who leaked information to the Associated Press about the foiling of a plot to blow up a passenger jet. And there's been a number of different points of view about this. And some people say, well, listen, they weren't listening to actual phone calls. They don't know the content of the phone calls. They got a list of numbers that were called, right? And they're not going after the reporters. They're only going after the leaker. A judge okayed it, so there was a check. What's the big deal? On the other hand, there are many people who say we have a perfect storm here of laws that are being used in a way that altogether mean that we can basically suspend basic rights when officials determine that it's okay to do so. So, for example, the seizure of the records came to light only because the government has this special set of guidelines which require it to notify media organizations of a subpoena for its records within, at the very most, 90 days. So the AP learned about the seizure of the phone records after the fact because of the policy. But let's look at some of the other policies, right? If you don't have a problem with this specific instance, let's look at the picture. The government can use subpoena power to find these leaks and then prosecute them under the Espionage Act. Now, the Espionage Act, by all reasonable interpretations, was never intended to silence whistleblowers or individual leakers. This is the same law that was used against Daniel Ellsberg, remember, Lewis, when he leaked those Pentagon papers.
Right.
Then we have the 2001 authorization for use of military force, which, when it's determined that it makes sense in individual instances, allows the assassination of U.S. citizens. Then we have the use of the FISA Amendments Act, which retroactively makes legal what under our Constitution once was not legal, right? The warrantless wiretapping and monitoring of tens of millions of U.S. citizens. And then we have Section 1021 of NDAA, which permits the government to have the military seize U.S. citizens, strip them of due process, and hold them in indefinite detention. Again, when there is this kind of consensus that they don't deserve due process. So on the one hand, we've got checks and balances, right? We need this. We need a subpoena. A judge needs to agree to it. Or in some cases, there's a panel of three judges. But taken together, this means that you can lose all civil liberties if the government decides to pursue these venues. Which side of this are you on, Lewis?
Well, I mean, I don't like the fact that the government decided to make all the alterations they did to our legal system. But I'm going to put that aside and just say what happened was legal.
So but what's your opinion? I mean, in other words, do you agree with this? Hey, it's legal because those who wanted to have these methods available made them legal, right?
Right. But I mean, you can trace that back pretty far.
You can.
So I mean, it's hard to point the finger. It's like the tax loophole thing with big corporations.
Right. Is it really a loophole if it's legal?
And the people responsible for that, some of them are now dead and gone. I mean, it goes back a long ways.
Let's hear from Natan. What do you think, Natan? Are you on the side of, hey, listen, we're not going to just do this willy-nilly. You have checks and balances, and it is the law, period. Or are you on the side of, it's concerning that taken all together, you can basically lose all of your civil liberties if a couple judges decide?
Well, look, you can say that, you can say that the law shouldn't be the law, and we need to change the law so that the government can't access reporters' phone records no matter what. But that's not what the law is. So if you agree that there are certain circumstances where national security concerns do justify, with a judge-ordered subpoena, looking into evidence like this, then
right.
Then basically it becomes a question of whether in this particular case you consider it to be justified. And the fact of the matter is that we don't know, because we don't know what the leak was. So in order to judge whether it was appropriate, if you agree that there are some situations where it would be appropriate, we really don't know right now.
But the issue is whether you're okay, forgetting about this specific instance, with the fact that with the 3 or 4 legal frameworks that I outlined, at the government's discretion, you actually don't have your civil liberties.
Well, that's always been the case, even before the modern laws, the Patriot Act, and even the Espionage Act. I mean, Abraham Lincoln closed down newspapers entirely during the Civil War. And if some people, assailed him for that, when you actually look at the context, they were working with Confederates. So, in certain situations, they called it treason, and maybe it was justified. The fact of the matter is that this has always been legal if and when national security is actually at risk. The question is whether it is or not.
We didn't need to really put these provisions on paper to say that if the government deems you enough of a threat, you're going to be detained, abducted, and they're going to do whatever they want with you.
Interesting. So it could happen anyway, just that now there's a legal framework to point to, which
Right.
they created.
Right.
Send me your thoughts on this, and also make sure to check out the bonus show. The bonus show is an extra program that we do. It's available to David Pakman Show members. Today on that show, we will be talking about a student who fakes his own kidnapping to avoid telling his parents he failed a class. We've got to have some serious helicopter parents there. Also, hipsters are driving up the price of cheap beer. Does this have Lewis concerned? We will talk to him. And a lot more. Not only do you get the bonus show as a David Pakman Show member, you get the commercial-free podcast, as well as the commercial-free 1-hour TV show, and an archive of our shows going back to 2005. DavidPakman.com/membership. Sign up, become a member. See you in a few minutes.
The David Pakman Show at DavidPakman.com.